Welcome to Fearfully and Wonderfully Me, a podcast for women on leadership and life skills with Mack Story.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us today for facilitating a high-impact book study. We also call these BCL sessions for Building Character-Based Leaders. So we are excited to be doing this video. We wanted to offer a video on facilitating these book study sessions because we have so many clients who are requesting information on how to conduct workforce development and leadership development in their organizations. And by far, this is the number one way that we have seen be impactful and successful in implementing culture and developing leadership and developing the people of an organization. And so we're going to get into that in just a minute.
Yeah, I just like to say, Rhea, that the book studies like we're going to teach, they're not just for the white collar crowd or the office crowd. They're for everybody. And the way we're going to share with you and teach with you and introduce it to you, everybody at every level. And if you want to get rid of the silos in your company, this is a great format for that. If you mix the teams up, you got to mix up the teams in different departments. And you hear some people talk about the front office and the shop floor, or in the office and in the field, and all different kind of ways that people are separated. Call them silos. This method we're going to teach you will help you break down those silos. We've seen it over and over and over and over again. It's just one of the best ways to do it because it facilitates relationship building.
Yep, and we're going to get into that. So are you ready to just jump in, Mac?
Let's dive in.
All right, so I'm going to pull up some slides here, add these to the screen so we can kind of walk through these all together. So facilitating a high impact BCL session book study. And here we are. So talking about what is a book study. I think a lot of times when we say the word or use the term book study, a lot of people think, oh gosh, I'm not in fourth grade anymore, right? And when we talk about a book study, it is really an opportunity for us all to come together and learn from one another, as well as learn from the material in the book that we're actually going through. So keep in mind that it's much more than just reading the book. It's actually allowing the time and space and comfort for everybody to learn from each other. So it's a powerful process. So we're going to cover a little bit more about that, what a facilitator is and isn't, and talk about the 2 steps to facilitating a book study and also some facilitation tips. So Mac, go ahead and talk about understanding personal potential.
Yeah, so personal potential is determined by consistent behavior based on good values. And we always talk about that success does not come primarily from our technical knowledge. And Rhea and I talk about the 87-13 principle. I learned it from John Maxwell. We learned it from John Maxwell, and he talks about it being based on research studies from various people. And all I know is I validated it in my life. I don't even really care about those numbers, but the number is 87-13, meaning 87% of our results come from character and only 13% from competency. As you see there, our education, certifications, vocational training, technical skills, all that type stuff. Only 13%. It's our character that's going to either magnify or multiply our competency. We got to have a competency. It's very, very important. But the book study, like we're going to teach you and talk to you about today, it's not about focusing on your competency, except for your competency to lead yourself well and to potentially lead others well, become a high impact team player. The competency related to character development. That's what we're going to talk to you about today.
Yeah, because so much of the time when we think about it, the true issues in an organization are all relative to character, right? It's never a lack of competency that gets somebody in trouble or causes conflict with team members or gets somebody fired, right? It's the character side of things, or what we might call the soft skills, right? Things like integrity or respecting each other, teamwork, trust. And yet most organizations spend more time and money developing on competency when in fact 87% of their problems come from character, maybe more than 87%.
Yeah, they focus on competency because it's required.
Mm-hmm.
Character development is optional in most companies.
Yeah. All right. So Talking about the remaining 87%, like you touched on, 87% of our potential comes from our values, our consistent actions, and our ability to work with others. So, developing good character and treating people well, and all of these are the values that individuals can have. But when we help individuals develop, then we see that the collective culture of the organization will improve.
Yeah, and one way to validate this, we always talk about RIA is if people are worried about the numbers, don't worry about the numbers. Those are real, but you can validate it in your own career. Have most people are hired for what they know, their competency, and then they're fired for who they are, their character. And most of the
Mm,
times, the problems people are having in organizations are people problems. They're usually not competency problems. And even if it's a competency problem, it's rooted in character. Every time I've ever seen it. So
absolutely.
that's what these the book study format with the BCL session is going to help you unleash your own potential as a
Mm.
facilitator. If you're facilitating, you're going to help unleash your team's potential, whoever that is that's on your book study. But relative to each individual, it's about looking in the mirror, working their own self.
All right. So you and I went down to the country of Guatemala in 2013
There we
and
are, Ria, sitting there.
there we are. That's a picture of us and some of the other team members. There were 150 team members from around the world. The nation of Guatemala asked John Maxwell to come in, and they said, you know what, we want to transform the culture of our nation. We want to implement leadership development across the nation. And so John turned around and invited 150 of the John Maxwell team members, of which we are part of, to come down and said, you know what, if you want to be a part of this initiative, we had to pay our own way, pay our own expenses, volunteer our time. I had to take vacation from work to be gone for a week, but it was a phenomenal experience in and of itself. But that's when we started to learn about the power of the book studies, and we called them roundtables back then, or they called them roundtables. And I think they call them transformational tables now, but we use the term book study because I think more people kind of understand what that means.
And
But back what
we don't do the full 3-part roundtable that we
That's
learned
true.
down there. We do the first 2 parts is what we're talking about here. There's an assessment that we don't teach because most people are not going to do the first 2 steps, much less the third one. So we try to make it more simple, more effective, and it is highly effective without the assessment. Any clients who want to know about the assessment, though, we're happy to help them with that, and we have an assessment ready to go for some of our books already.
Yeah, absolutely. And what was interesting is that when they talk about transforming the culture of a nation and implementing leadership development, that was the tool that they used. And when you and I got back from the trip, I was struggling as a leader with 2 particular team members in my department who did not like each other. And that's kind of putting it mildly, actually. They really hated one another. They both had worked there for a long time. They both had spouses that worked in the organization for a long time. There was some shared history, there was some shared conflict, and I didn't know that. And they both got kind of voluntold to come work in my department, and they wouldn't speak to each other. I put these 2 team members in one 8 by 10 office with 2 desks because they were doing kind of the same type of work and needed to work together, but they wouldn't speak to each other. And in fact, the toxic culture in our department was so bad that one of them went to lunch one day and the other one rearranged the office so she could have the better desk space. I mean, it was, and I was struggling as a leader as how to get these 2 team members to come together. And I'm like, you don't have to love each other, but at least be civil to one another.
That'll cause
And
some
I mean,
problems.
it was terrible conflict, and we, obviously morale was affected. It was affecting our whole department. And I mean, on Friday nights, I would be up Googling like team building exercises, and I tried, we'd gone to the food bank to volunteer. We went to, do team building exercises and trying to just make these 2 team members, again, kind of build a little relationship. And, again, they don't have to just love each other, but they did need to work together. And when we got back from the Guatemala trip, I didn't have anything else, but we'd learned this incredibly powerful process and tool, the book studies. And so I said, well, you know what? I've tried everything else. We are going to do book studies. And that was before you and I had written any of our books. So we didn't have any books. So I basically took the 7 habits of highly effective people and summarized each chapter in short little one-page documents, and we did our book studies every week on that material. And 3 sessions, 1 session a week for 3 weeks. The third session, these 2 team members were crying good tears and hugging each other. And the change in our department was so profound. I mean, everybody could tell something was going on. In fact, my boss came to me and she's like, "What are you doing in those book studies?" And I was like, "It's not me. It's just the power of the process, right?" I hadn't really changed as a leader, but I had just started leading them through the process of personal growth and transformation.
Good stuff, Riz.
It was so good. Do you want to talk about this slide?
So transformation is the key, and we're talking about personal transformation. When we were in Guatemala, that was the underlying theme was transformation begins with me. I mean, they made T-shirts. It was a big slogan. It was the whole deal was wrapped around that, right? So I'm not controlled by what's going on outside of me. I'm
Mm,
controlled by what's going on inside of me. And I always say, our values on the inside are expressed as character on the outside. And if I can change, my world changes. And I know because I've had my own personal transformation. The world I used to live in is still out there. I don't live in that world anymore. And it's because I chose personal transformation. And everyone can share stories of challenges and victories related to their values. And here at the bottom, you see there's a point that says, here's one of mine and how I benefited. So what I want to share with you related to that bullet is, for me personally, it was overcoming short temper. And I
mm,
would listen to it in the audio book back in 2008, changed my life. And the lesson I got out of that was the value that I adopted was between stimulus and response. I have the freedom to pause and choose my response. And so do you. And I had never thought about it. At that time, it was profound to me. And so the book study format that we're going to teach you, it facilitates thought provoking content absorption that's going to raise your awareness. So we're not going to talk about that too much yet, because we're going to get actually to that in these slides. But that's the point that you got to know is, when you facilitate a book study like we're going to teach you here, you're basically inviting everyone to look within and focus on personal transformation. And I've
mm.
even got a book where I share how I literally did that. It's called 10 Foundational Elements of Intentional Transformation: How to Become Your Best Self. And it's formatted with 30 chapters, 3 pages per chapter. And you can
Yeah.
see there on the bottom of the screen, you can go there and preview that book and many other books. There's a link to a button to go preview Ria's books and excerpts from her books too. So lots of, I mean, hundreds of pages of content out there.
Yeah. All right. So moving on, transformation is a process, not an event. And, we overestimate the impact of an event. A 1 day training or sending somebody to a seminar is an event, but transformation happens every day. It doesn't happen in 1 day. So, an event is something that introduces information, it can ignite hope, inspire action, and fuel belief. But the process provides a way to apply what is learned over time, right? And that is the power of a process, is the consistency, the small steps forward compounded over time, and that creates sustainable change. So, when it talks about here, the capacity to govern ourselves and become successful comes from applying good values and universal laws to ourselves consistently over time. But in order to do that, we first have to be aware of those principles and values, and then understand how to apply them in small changes throughout our day and throughout our life. So talk about the power of the book study.
So the approach of the book study is very simple, but it's highly effective. And I'm going to tell you what we're going to teach you in this uh, training video. Most people won't do it because they think it's too simple. That's the problem with it. It's too simple. It's highly effective if you do it the way that we're going to teach you throughout this video training course right here. It's super powerful, but people want to mess it up. They want to add to it and change it and discuss things and give opinions and judge what people are saying. we're going to teach you all the ins and outs of it. But the most common form of training is one-way communication, where one person talks and everyone else listens, kind of like we're doing right here. That this is actually there's two of us here, but we're taking turns, kind of. But one person's talking, everyone else listens, and that's a great way to convey information, which is the point of this training. But it's not as effective for transformation. Nobody's going to transform themselves from listening to this training right here. If they go do the book study the way we're talking about it, they absolutely going to transform themselves and invite those that are participating to transform themselves. And if you want to have a better life, a better culture, you got to focus on personal transformation.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so book studies employ two-way communication in a structured environment. And we all know that two-way communication is valuable, particularly for this transformation, right? Where I'm not just receiving information, but I'm able to send something back in the message. So the thing about this is that ideas are not taught in a book study. They are just facilitated, right? Growth is facilitated. I can't make somebody else grow, but I can facilitate a process that will help somebody grow. So in a book study, a designated person leads, but all participants share from their own experience. And as a result, everyone grows together.
So book studies are effective because of several reasons. They're conducted in a small group setting. We recommend 4 to 10 people, and it's very important for you to stick within in those. You don't want it to take too long, but you want to have enough people that there's enough contribution to actually provoke thought and raise a level of awareness. If you're at home, you want to do a one-on-one book study with your teenager using this format, it'd probably be okay. But we still recommend, if you got some other family members, try to at least get to that minimum of 4. But in the work environment, you can always get to 4. So go with 4 to 10 people. They're usually going to take between 10 minutes and 15 minutes. It depends on how many people you have, and you'll understand that as we go through the training. We're going to break that down and help you understand. So we're talking about to cover one chapter from one of our books. One of our books that's formatted with a 30 chapter, 3-page per chapter format. It's going to take you 6 or 7 minutes. We're going to teach you that here in a second. But just saying, when we're saying it takes between 10 and 15 minutes, that's based on one of our 3-page chapter books, which we have a lot of them. We've published 34 books. Not all of them are regular type books. Some of them are journals, and I've got my toolbox tips, but we have a lot of regularly formatted books that are 30 chapters, 3 pages each. So the book study is effective because it gives every participant a voice and an opportunity for a win, meaning a personal win. Another value of this, when we say it gives everyone a voice, if you get a new employee, they can be added to a team instantly. They instantly begin building relationships and having a voice. They get to share just like anybody who's been there 10 years or 20 years or 30 years. And the book studies designed to emphasize and promote personal growth. Again, most companies don't focus on that at all because it's not required.
All right, so you touched on this, but what determines how long the book study lasts? Reading and listening to a 3-page chapter, again, from our books. Certainly you can use other books, but ours are formatted specifically for this reason. That takes 6 to 7 minutes total. And then sharing one important point per person is up to a minute per participant. So if you had 5 people participating, for example, it would be 6 or 7 minutes, approximately another 5 minutes. So 11 to 12 minutes total. And that is the perfect length to just get in a short little regular, consistent growth session that doesn't take all day, but it can happen on a regular basis without being an overburden in everybody's busy schedule.
And we recommend doing at least a chapter per week. And we call it a leadership drip. You want to keep that drip going, and 10 to 15 minutes per week covering one chapter. You can have multiple teams. Everybody. If you got 50 people, you're gonna have a lot of teams going on at one time. If you got 1,000 people, it's a lot of different teams. But it's basically 10 or 15 minutes per person with their team at a minimum. Some of our clients, I would say, some of them that are getting the best results, they do 2 or 3 chapters per week. Sometimes they do 3 chapters in a row on one day, and some of them do 3 different days with 1 chapter per day, like a Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. So different ways to do it, but at a minimum, if you want to be highly effective, you need to do at least 1 chapter per week.
Yeah, agreed. All right, so the facilitator plays an incredibly important role in this process. And we could define a facilitator as someone who, again, enables the process to happen and is responsible for providing the environment. And this, it's so key that that facilitator is willing to model and share from a place of humility and vulnerability. And the reason that's so important is because that's where the learning comes in. For example, if we're reading a chapter on listening and I say, wow, this quote on listening was so great, and I'm a great listener. There's no growth in that, right? Nobody wants to hear how great a listener I am because they probably already know that sometimes I don't listen. But if we're doing the chapter on listening and I say, man, this is a great quote on listening, and it resonated with me because I got it wrong last night when Mac came in to talk to me and I didn't stop what I was doing and pay attention. And I'm sharing from a place of vulnerability and humility, saying, I got it wrong. So I'm focusing on self, like what do I need to do better, right? Transformation begins with me, but I'm not judging someone else. I'm not telling Susie over there that she needs to be a better listener. I'm not criticizing anyone. I'm just saying, oh, here's an instance where I got it wrong. And the reason that's powerful is everybody else subconsciously starts to listen to that and say, are there times when I might could do better at that? And we're leveraging the power of subconscious learning. And it's incredibly powerful because, again, it creates a safe space when the facilitator is willing to be humble and vulnerable.
Yeah, and I'd like to say we got a great example. If you're want to see a great example, Jim McEwen, we featured him on our Real People Getting Real Results video series, interview series, and man, Jim is phenomenal. So you see it scrolling on the bottom of your screen there. Go to youtube.com/@Blue-Collar-Leadership and look for the playlist titled Real People Getting Real Results. And it'll be episode 11. And you'll see Jim's name there on the thumbnail. Go check that out. He's a frontline entry level worker. But the thing about being a facilitator, you don't have to be the boss. The boss can be the facilitator, but the key is right there at the bottom in that bullet. You got to share from a place of humility and vulnerability. You got to be willing to model. Doesn't matter what level you're at. And Jim facilitates 2 book studies a week with his 10-person team, and he is a great example. But they're doing it all together. He's been doing it for 2 years. But go watch that video. Jim's contact information is there. If you got any questions about it, I know Jim. Jim would love for you to call him or email him. I forget what contact information he shared in that video, but he would love to help you understand the power of a book study. So pretty powerful. Hope you go check that out. And also, I'd just like to mention, if there's an interest, I did a couple of years ago, I think, I really can't remember when it was, but I did a 30-minute audio podcast episode on this same content. I'd say it's probably not as good as this because you can't see the slides and that sort of stuff. But it's episode 305. Rhea's showing on the screen right there. If you want to go see some testimonials from some other people, there's at least 4 different clients we feature on that link right there, bluecollarleadership.com/book study training. There's also a link to that 305 audio podcast. Probably going to be a link to this one right here once we get done creating it. So anyway, lots of resources for you to learn from other people who have already done this, not just trust us, but we've done it too. We know all about it. And so pretty powerful. Hope you dive into that content.
So what a facilitator is not a coach, not a teacher, not a counselor, not a commentator. And this is hard. And to me, this is one of the more difficult challenges of a facilitator is preserving the process, preserving the power of the process, not teaching or coaching or getting into discussion and not allowing anybody else to do that, but doing that in a respectful way that, again, respects the safety and the integrity of the process. So a facilitator is not there to fix others or give correction, not there to impress or challenge, teach, not there to judge and not to give praise. And that's a big one because we want to keep this safe. So what happens as we go through, I would, as the facilitator, take my turn reading a paragraph, or some of our clients play the audio book for the corresponding chapter, and everybody can follow along in their own book, underline their key points. Either way is done is fine. I've done it both ways. Most people are more comfortable if you play the audio book and then let everybody follow along rather than taking turns reading out loud. Some people are not comfortable reading out loud. Either one's
Plus,
fine, but go
plus
ahead.
when you're if you're actually reading, a lot of times people are worried about which paragraph do I have to read. So they're trying to count ahead, figure out how many people are ahead of them, which paragraph they're going to read. They're trying to look and see if there's any words in there they might struggle with or that sort of stuff. So when you listen to the audio, it just frees people up to focus on the content and then to highlight. They ain't got to worry about the reading part. So
Hmm.
do it either way, but listening to the audio and following along in a real book is what we've seen to be the most effective way. So what a facilitator is, they're a participant, they're a model of authenticity, and they're an honest contributor. And the facilitator is there to challenge themselves, not afraid to expose their own weakness. They're there to share from their own life. They're to care for people and respect their opinions. They're to keep the group on track, and they're to follow the two-step process.
On this,
Which
but yeah, everyone takes a turn. It's step number one. Everyone takes a turn reading a paragraph aloud until the chapter has been read. And again, some people choose to play the audio. So facilitator reads first and is then followed by each group member. As the paragraphs are being read, each group member underlines or highlights key points that are important to them. And then each person takes 1 minute to share one thing they underlined, why it's important. Go around until everybody has the opportunity to contribute.
and I'd recommend, if you're going to facilitate a book study, anybody who's going to participate, they need to watch this video or either go listen to the 305 audio podcast, either one. But if you can help your team understand why you're doing everything the way you're doing it as a facilitator, they can help you be successful. They already know what's expected of them. So it's beginning with the end in mind if you actually let them watch this video. And you may want to watch it together and talk about it. And don't start the
Sure.
book study till everybody has gone through this. Maybe do it together. If you don't have the full time to do it all at once, maybe chop it up into pieces.
Yep. All right. So facilitation tips. You want to talk about these?
You must go first and model for the others. The facilitator is the key to how effective the book study is going to be, because I got to get it right. I got to look in the mirror. I got to focus on me. Everyone's given an opportunity and is encouraged to participate in each step of the process. If someone wants to pass, don't force them to speak. They say pass, you say thank you. It doesn't matter. You say thank you just like they said the most phenomenal thing you've ever heard. And if that happens, you still say thank you. You don't reach across the table and high five and everybody gets fired up. That's another reason you want everybody to listen to this training so they understand why it's kind of dry. It's dry on purpose because it ain't dry up in your mind where all the thinking is happening. Being dry means it's safe.
Neutral. Yeah.
Yeah, neutral. Neutral is a better word than dry. But it's going to seem dry because there's not a lot of emotions coming out unless somebody's being emotional when they're sharing. And even if they're emotional, you just say thank you. You want to go over there and hug them and do all this kind of stuff and praise them and pump them up. You just say thank you.
Don't
And
do
that's
it.
hard too. It's really hard
It
doing
is.
that. So the key, be transparent and authentic. Be willing to admit your shortcomings to create a safe environment where everyone can speak with authenticity. When you do it, other people are more likely to do it. They may not do it the first couple of times. They may be a little more timid. They may be more insecure. But if you facilitate in a way that creates a safe space, we've seen it over and over. Those folks who are quiet, they kind of come out of their shell once they realize it is safe, that they can say whatever they want. And all they're going to hear is thank you. They're not going to be judged about it. Nobody's going to start a conversation about it and start asking questions. None of that's going to happen. If you facilitate it that way, you're going to pull people out so that they can start growing at an entirely different level. And
Yeah.
if necessary, share with discretion while being honest. That's another key component.
All right. Everyone should use the pronouns I and me when sharing. So avoid words like we or you or they or or people should, because again, the power of transformation is focusing on self. What can I do? I cannot fix or correct other people, right? That's not going to get me anywhere. So the power is focusing on what I can do, what I have the ability to do. And then again, making sure, oh, go ahead.
You go ahead, Real.
I was just going to say, making sure to thank every participant after they share.
Yep. And if you're the facilitator, even if you're not, if you're a participant and you're watching this, that top bullet right there and the underline, the sub bullet, you got to focus hard on that, especially if you're the facilitator, because you got a model. It's about it's about me. I ain't gonna be saying we, you, they, and people should. I mean, we hear people doing that all the time. And if people do it while you're leading the book study, you don't make a big deal out of it during the book study. You just say thank you, and you understand maybe they're not doing it the way they should be doing it, but they're learning. But the point is, the next time you do a book study, remind them of this right here. Anything that's not happening, every time you facilitate another session, remind them of the things that are not happening. And we recommend, each person gets up to 1 minute. Use your phone. Most time, everybody's got a phone with a stopwatch on it. Put it there. Hit a 1 minute timer when everybody's doing their sharing, and talk about it up front and say, hey, when it gets to about 50 seconds, if you're still talking, I'm going to flip my phone up so you'll know it's time to wrap it up. And everybody agrees with it on the front end. That way it's not a withdrawal. No one's feeling like you're singling them out. Everybody's going to have the same 1 minute or less to share. So facilitation is key.
All right. You touched on this, but don't embarrass or single someone out if they go too long. Just kind of gently remind them, hey, time's up. Let's move on to the next person. I find it really helpful the first several times that I'm facilitating a book study with a new group. I kind of recap the guidelines before we get started. So I say, okay, we're getting ready to do our book study. Just as a reminder, we want to share from a place of humility, share using the words I or me, don't focus on other people. And let's just try to keep it to 1 minute. So just kind of recap those guidelines as you get started as helpful in keeping that top of mind. People will get comfortable with the process and more in tune with it, but just not embarrassing them or singling them out, just kind of gently helping them move along. Avoid topics that build walls. This is the thing, when a book study is going on, hopefully and ideally the only thing going on is the book study. Try not to have this tagged on to a separate meeting or in the middle of something else, or try not to discuss things like work or politics or religion or anything like that. Like, just make sure that we're preserving the integrity of the process and honoring the process and making sure that this stands alone as much as possible. Keep the focus on self-improvement.
So respect people's time by starting and ending on time. That's a big one. If you're going to start at 8 o'clock, you got 10 people on the team, 3 people show up at 10 o'clock, you start. And people will learn when they keep coming in and you already going around the room, that they'll learn, but to show up on time. Because if you wait, what you're doing is training everybody that you're going to wait. So then people are going to be late. Even people who are going to be on time are going to now become late. And you get in this vicious cycle. So starting late is an invitation to show up late. Don't start late. Start on time. As long as there's one person there beside you, it's time to start, you start. So bring extra pens, highlighters. People are going to forget sometimes. But transformation groups often work best when they meet on the same day at the same time every week in the same place. And you can do them in person. Some people do some in person. They do a hybrid. Some are on video. Some people may be on a phone. There's all different ways to do it. If you want to make it happen, you'll find a way. If you don't, you'll find an excuse. So figure out how to make it happen.
Points to keep in mind. Book studies bring about transformation, which is a process, not an event. And when I apply truth to myself, it brings transformation. If I apply truth to others, they feel judged and resist the process. And no one operates well when they feel judged. So again, making sure someone shares. When someone shares, you say thank you instead of very good or well done or something like that. Just say thank you. And I know we've said that several times, but it is so critical and important.
Yeah, a lot of times people say that's great, that's good, but they don't say that to everybody. So and it may not be good or great to everybody. Just say thank you and move on.
Oh.
So points to keep in mind, people will find their own solutions and grow in their own way if you facilitate it the way that we're teaching you. And if you want to talk about the book, because a lot of people like to talk about the book, they like to have that discussion. That's fine, but that needs to be another meeting. It can't be part of this meeting. You can't do it. You can't facilitate the book study this way, and then when you get done, everybody talks about the book. I mean, you can, but it ain't safe any longer. Everything's being judged, and it's going against everything that we're saying. And a lot of people do that, and they do grow, and they learn, but they're not getting the kind of personal transformation that the people will actually get if you do it the way we're talking about. And if you want to facilitate transformation and you don't follow the method we're teaching you, you're robbing a lot of people from experiencing personal transformation, because as a facilitator, you're not creating the right environment. So model keeping your sharing time brief. Aim to take 1 minute when it's your turn. Just because you facilitator don't mean you get 2 minutes or 5 minutes. You got to be, everybody's watching you as the model. So you got to do all the stuff we're teaching you here. You got to be the best at modeling it. Should be. Whoever is the leader of the group. And the book study is a place for self-expression, not confrontation. It ain't about you. And like we talked, it ain't about everybody else. It's about you looking in the mirror. John Maxwell says everything rises and falls on leadership. Leadership rises and falls on character. The book study is a place to develop character and promote personal growth. It's, again, seems so simple, but it's highly effective. As long as you don't muddy up the water and try to do things your own way. And I'm telling you, almost everybody does. And they don't understand what they're missing, because people are still growing, but they're missing personal transformation. Some people are. So as an individual, you can add value to others. That value is compounded as a group meets through your personal story. Why did you underline what you underline? When you sharing that from a place of humility and vulnerability, that's how you're able to motivate and inspire others.
All right. So as we talk about our last slide here, and then we'll start to wrap up, points to keep in mind: application is the key to success. The book study provokes thought and raises awareness. And if you don't honor the process and the safety and integrity of the process, if you even open the door for a little discussion, you open the door for everything else, right? And it's really hard to get that process back if you don't stick to it from the beginning. So, word of caution to be very intentional with, hey, let's try not to do any discussion here, but just honor the power of the process here. It is powerful. You'll either build trust or distrust with all who are participating. So if, for example, if with 3 of the 4 people you say, thank you, thank you, thank you, and then the last one you say, good job or something, you've disrupted the process, right? But worse than that, you've broken it with just one person out of the 4. And so now that person, you're building some distrust with them because they kind of feel singled out. So again, making sure that you are building trust with everybody, but just sticking to the process as much as possible. And the most humble person on the team will be viewed as the leader. Because again, we're not talking about leadership from a position of authority. We're talking about the leader in the process of transformation and personal growth.
And if someone doesn't want to share, don't try to talk them into sharing. You say thank you and go to the next person, because that's what keeps it safe. The people, if they don't want to share, they don't want to share, but they're still listening. And I'm telling you, if you facilitate in the way that we've taught you, and you actually model all of this stuff, and you don't muddy up the water, most often those people who are quiet and who say pass in the beginning, they're going to start sharing. But if you try to force them to share or talk them into sharing, they're probably going to stop sharing. And if they got the opportunity, they may stop coming.
Yeah. All right. So closing thoughts, anything we didn't cover, Mack, that you want to add or share?
I think we covered it. The number one thing is focus on self. That's number one thing for the individual. Number one thing for the group is keep it safe. Don't turn it into a discussion. Don't go outside the boundaries that we've laid out for you. And again, most people do. and they still get better, but they don't get the personal transformation that we tell them they will get, because whatever reason, Rhea, people think they know better. So they start tweaking on it. They start changing it. They start doing, and they've never seen it done the way that we teach. So they never experience what we're trying to get them to experience through this training video right here. I mean, we can't emphasize but so much. Do it exactly. And it ain't about us. It ain't because we're trying to control you. We know what works. It's principles. You got to follow and align yourself and your team with these principles. And again, almost nobody does it. So if you do it this way, you're going to facilitate transformation.
Yeah, I've done hundreds and hundreds of these book studies, and I've seen, I've certainly made mistakes as a facilitator, but I've seen that the more I stick to the process, the more powerful the individuals have transformation and growth. And it just, every time I see that process applied and it gets powerful results, I'm reminded again and again that as much as possible, sticking to the process and keeping it safe, keeping it respectful, and again, making sure that we are creating an environment that facilitates and fosters increased self-awareness and growth, because that's what facilitates transformation.
So I want to share a quick story, Rhea, right here, wrap this up.
Sure.
The CEO of a $1 billion company, Bluebird Bus, he called me up and he wanted transformation in his company, and he wanted it fast, and he wanted to know what to do. And we told him about the book studies. And he had 1,800 employees, so he bought 3 books for everybody, 5,400 books, almost $100,000 worth of books. And we went in for 2 weeks, and Rhea and I led 11 teams per day, 11 teams of 10 people, basically 110 formal authority leaders, including anybody who had somebody report to them went through a book study with us, including those C-level leaders and everybody in between, down to the entry-level frontline team leader. So we went in, we facilitated 3 chapters a day, which means in 10 days, we had facilitated each team through an entire book. That particular one was Blue Collar Leadership and Supervision, Unleash Your Team's Potential. And you can see the first 5 chapters at our download link. But that CEO, he couldn't believe after 3 days, right there's the link. You can go preview the first 5 chapters of that book that we actually facilitated with that group. But he couldn't believe after 3 days, which was 9 chapters in that case, how much those leaders had transformed themselves as leaders after only 3 days, 9 chapters. And it was powerful. And after we got done, those leaders started facilitating their own book studies with their teams. And they shifted and started doing 3 chapters once a week. They did it all at the same time, but they did it once a week. And then once they went through that book, it took them 10 weeks to finish a book. Then they got another book and went through it. So pretty powerful. And that's the way the high impact teams, high performance teams do it. They do it from top to bottom. Everybody's included. Everybody's engaged. And everybody gets to work on improving themselves. And when they do, the culture will transform in the company.
And quickly. Absolutely. Love it. All right. Well, hopefully you've got a good start on facilitating a book study and a BCL session, building character-based leaders. We could talk about the more in-depth version of facilitator training all day, but most of the time, if you will just, again, stick to what we've covered here in this video and just do it, right? Don't be afraid to get in there and just start doing the book studies. And you probably will make some mistakes. It's human, and that's okay. Give yourself some grace, but try to get back on track with the power of the process and just keep going, keep growing.
And reach out to us if you have questions. We're happy to help you and give you some tips personally, or recommend some books, or just talk to you about what you're doing in general. A lot of people take advantage of our special offer because we offer 300 books. You purchase the books, you can get any combination. You can get all of one title, or you can mix and match between our 34 titles, and it's $5,400 for 300 books. And we'll come out. What's that?
Currently, that's our current special offer.
Currently, yeah. Go to that website right there, bluecollarleadership.com/special offer and special dash offer, and you'll actually see whatever the current special offer is. But it's some amount of books, and then we'll come speak for up to 2 hours, which is currently 300 books. We'll pay all of our expenses, come speak for up to 2 hours in any of the 50 states. And so a lot of people take advantage of that. They bring us in, we get people fired up and motivated. And then they take the books after we leave. We spray them with the fire hose, Rhea, and then they take the books and they keep the leadership drip going.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right.
Well, good stuff. Thanks for joining us for this session. Again, reach out with any questions or if we can help you on the journey, and keep climbing.